Marcus Villegas had not slept a full night in 3 years. Something in his skull thrummed whenever darkness pooled over the city. The sound was half heartbeat, half metronome, impossible to ignore. At 2 a.m., while most of New Lumen dangled in the hush between bar close and dawn, Marcus shouldered a canvas bag of lenses and slipped into the streets. The insomnia was a curse, but it had also become his trademark. His photographs, strangers frozen beneath humming neon, taxis losing themselves in rain-smeared motion blur, were published in zines that insisted the city never looked more alive than when everyone else was unconscious. Tonight he began at a 24-hour laundromat on Mott Street. Fluorescent glare licked the stainless steel machines. Detergent mist carried a faint citrus tang. A woman in a hoodie folded infant clothes with robotic care. Marcus shot her reflection in the washer door, then moved on. At a shuttered bakery a block away, a dreadlocked courier balanced a box of unsold croissants on his bicycle handlebars. Marcus crouched, dialed a long exposure to stretch the courier's motion into a ribbon of light, and fired. The routine felt priestly. Confession after confession whispered to black glass. By 4 o'clock, the bag was heavy with exposed rolls. Marcus rounded a corner by the river and lifted the camera for a self-portrait. A silhouette against the harbor cranes, a wink of sodium lamp in the lens. He did this every night, partly as a role marker, partly to prove to himself that he still occupied his own narrative. He heard the shutter clap, satisfied, and finally trudged home. His apartment was a narrow slice above an antique repair shop. Chemical odor from the downstairs lacquer seeped into his dark room. Marcus developed film before sunrise, too jittery for coffee, watching contact sheets blossom in silver nitrate. The laundromat woman appeared exactly as he remembered. The courier, the fogged storefronts. Nothing was amiss. But when he reached the harbor frame, something was wrong. The crane silhouette, the sodium lamp, the glimmering inlet. All correct. But the place where Marcus should have stood was empty. In his stead loomed a tall, bone-thin shadow that seemed denser than night, edges crisp as shattered glass. It wore no clothes, no face, just a black geometry encroaching on the world. Marcus blinked hard. He had botched exposures before, double frames or accidental lens caps. But this was different. The negative was perfect. The shadow occupied the precise latitude he had. He checked the subsequent self-portraits from earlier weeks. On each, the figure replaced him, sometimes standing, sometimes crouched, never in identical posture. He was vanishing one frame at a time. Perhaps sleeplessness had damaged his brain. He ran tap water over his head, then scanned the negatives into his laptop to enlarge the phenomenon. The shadow looked almost matte, absorbing light rather than warping it. At higher resolution, he sensed faint ridges, as if the thing had ribs. Marcus skipped breakfast and hurried to Volt & Co.'s imaging, his preferred lab, wanting impartial confirmation. Volt, an old-school technician who believed only in chemistry and physics, peered at the contact sheet through a loop. "Your tripod slip?" he asked, but he sounded unconvinced. No one can stand that still in 2 places at once. Could it be a processing artifact? Marcus suggested. Volt shook his head. Artifacts repeat patterns. This doesn't repeat. Besides, it's, how do I say, intentional, like it chose to occupy that exact negative. The word chose left Marcus with a metallic taste. By afternoon, gray daylight seeped over the skyline. Marcus stepped outside the lab to discover the city had become offensively bright, as if someone had twisted the contrast knob on reality. He shielded his eyes, nausea churning, and turned toward home. Half a block later he sensed it, footsteps synchronized to his own but softer, a frictionless glide. He pivoted. The sidewalk lay empty except for a flapping pigeon. He walked again. There. The phantom echo persisted. He quickened, so did it. At a storefront mirror he risked glancing sideways. His reflection remained, but 10 paces behind him, superimposed onto the glass, was the tall, dark shape, translucently perched against daylight. It melted when he spun around. Marcus spent the next hours photographing frantically in bright sun. He wanted proof. A garbage collector in a scarlet safety vest gamely allowed a portrait. Marcus angled the shot so his own reflection appeared in the stainless hopper. 5 minutes later, he checked his camera's preview screen. The worker was there, the street, the sky. Marcus himself erased, the shadow in his place, stark even under noon glare. Sweat pooled under his collar despite the crisp weather. He deleted the image and tried again from a new angle, with a tourist couple near the fountain, then with a blind busker playing accordion. Every time he vanished, the intruder persisted. Sunlight revealed that the shadow now cast a faint aura, like soot dispersing under water. When dusk crawled up the towers, Marcus locked himself in the apartment, taping blackout curtains to every seam. He placed mirrors strategically above the kitchenette, opposite the couch, so he could monitor corners while he edited. But the monitors themselves betrayed him. Each live view window showed the shadow hovering at his chair's periphery, though his human shape occupied it too. Two existences laid upon one set of pixels, one too many for the frame, producing a nauseating parallax. At 3:12 a.m., exhaustion finally clubbed him. He collapsed on the futon, camera hugged to his chest as if it were armor. Dreams came hacked and frantic. Busted shutters, film unwinding like intestines, a hallway whose floor was coated with photographs that stuck to his soles. He woke at 3:19, 7 minutes, hours, to the realization that someone stood at the foot of the bed. The room was pitch black, and yet he saw it, darker than dark, nearly ceiling height. The figure's edges leaked a mist that swallowed any stray glimmer. He tried to rise, but his limbs refused. The entity raised an arm, long, jointless, toward the camera. Click. The camera shutter fired, though no finger pressed it. Light from the strobe bled across the walls, and the image seared itself into Marcus's mind, the creature leaning over him like a surgeon. When vision returned, the figure was gone, leaving the fetid scent of burned silver. Marcus didn't remember opening the curtains, yet dawn stripes lay across the floor. He spent the morning cross-referencing folklore, doppelgangers, nocturnal parasites, shadow people said to perch on chests during sleep paralysis. None fit. Marcus could still move in daylight, and the entity seemed bound not to him but to his photographic record. If he was absent from images, perhaps soon he'd be absent from life as well. Desperation suggested a solution. He gathered every negative in which the shadow appeared and clipped them into an iron bowl. Setting them on the fire escape, he doused the pile with lighter fluid. As flames licked the acetate, acrid smoke spiraled. A neighbor shouted, asking if something was burning. Marcus waved them off. When the negatives wrinkled into black confetti, an odd hush fell. Even the traffic hummed more quietly, as though the city had shifted down a key. His phone vibrated. A text from Volt. "You okay? Found something. Call me." Marcus sprinted to the lab. Volt met him in the dim hallway with 2 prints. The first captured Marcus during a workshop 6 months earlier, demonstrating aperture priority. He stood beside a model, smiling. The second was identical, except for one detail. Marcus's eyes were empty white voids, and behind his shoulders the shadow peaked, hands perched on him like a puppeteer. "I archived your older files," Volt murmured. "It's been creeping in for months. You didn't notice because it was subtle." A cold film coated Marcus's organs. "I just burned the newest negatives," he whispered. "Does it look weaker in those?" Volt hesitated. "I'm not sure you understand. When you destroy a negative, the image on it stops existing. But when I checked the archive 10 minutes ago, the burned frames were still there, intact, only now you're missing from them and the figure is sharper. As though erasing your side gives it more room." Marcus staggered against the light table. Through Volt's glass wall office, he glimpsed reflections in multiple surfaces, a scanner bed, a roll of glossy paper, and in everyone, somewhere, was the shadow. sometimes in miniature, sometimes looming like a storm cloud. "I have to go," Marcus said. He ran into the city where afternoon traffic roared, horns cutting his nerves into ribbons. The shadow walked with him now openly, no longer shy, pacing parallel across car hoods, across aluminum billboards, existing wherever reflective surfaces bloomed. Commuters overlooked it. Only Marcus's eyes could catch it like dust motes. He found himself heading toward the river, same harbor cranes where the first substitution occurred. Perhaps geography mattered, like returning to the point of infection. The docks radiated sunset brass when he arrived. Cargo nets clanked in the wind. Marcus lifted the camera with trembling hands to shoot the place where he disappeared. He set the timer for 10 seconds, then stood, forcing himself to smile. The shutter popped. He reviewed. Empty pier, skeleton cranes, water. No Marcus, no shadow either, just void, an unoccupied world. It felt profoundly worse. He backed away and bumped a bollard. Something rippled in the water, a smudge sliding beneath the surface. As waves slapped concrete, the thing rose from the reflection like a person climbing through a membrane. Not water, he realized. Glass. The river was now a mirror. The shadow hauled itself upright, dripping nothing as dry as fossil. Facing him, it unfurled to full height. The air turned brittle. The gulls' cries muffled, as though the sky were padded with foam. Marcus ran. The figure matched him, stride for stride, but on facades. It bounded across the windows of warehouses, sprinted along chrome bumpers, vaulted across puddles, always pressed to any sheened surface. He could outrun a human, but not omnipresent geometry. When he cut through an alley, he saw it scuttling on the black screen of a turned-off television inside a pawn shop. He burst onto Main and nearly collided with pedestrians, shouting for them to look. They only frowned. Something inside him snapped like a shutter spring. He hurried toward the Midtown Arts Cooperative, where an opening reception of his newest exhibition, City of Insomniacs, was scheduled that very night. Maybe an audience could witness the horror and free him from solitary madness. Inside the gallery, interns were hanging framed prints. Marcus seized a hammer, removed 2 random landscapes, and replaced them with the latest shots from the docks. He dimmed the lights to direct attention. Guests trickled in around 7. The room smelled of cheap wine and lacquer. Marcus steeled himself near the curb to greet them, scanning anything reflective, car windows, phone screens, for a trace. Nothing. For 10 cautious minutes, hope peeped like a sparrow. Maybe bringing people into the equation would anchor him. At 7:12, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone pointed at a print titled Rivermouth Number 32. The harbor scene glimmered under track lamps, and the shadow, colossal, had slid closer to the foreground than when Marcus last checked. It now occupied half the composition, edges fuzzing like overexposed film. Whispers bloomed. "New piece? Is that CGI? You didn't post this on socials, Marcus." Then screams. A woman holding a wine glass staggered back, eyes fixed on another frame. In that one, the shadow leaned out, one arm protruding past the mat board as though breaching the fourth wall. The gallery lights flickered. Marcus felt static scrawl across his scalp. He turned to the big plate glass window facing the street, and there, of course, it stood. Inside the glass, full height, mirroring nothing. With slow certainty, it raised a palm against the window interior. A spiderweb fracture radiated from the touch. Panic detonated. Guests stampeded for exits. Marcus shouted for them to keep their eyes open, to document everything. But the moment phones lifted, screens went black. The power failed, plunging the space into shadow. Only exit signs glowed ruin red. Yet in those dim rectangles, Marcus saw silhouettes multiply. The figure's limbs sprouted like tree branches. Each exit sign birthed a new shard of darkness. He tore a picture off the wall and hurled it to the floor. The glass shattered. The print within curled like autumn leaf, and the creeping darkness on that sheet dissipated into ash. Inspiration knifed through him. Break the images, sever its anchors. He smashed another and another, stomping frames. Each time a phantom exhale cooled the air, as if the creature felt the blows. When he reached the harbor print, however, his courage faltered. The creature there was as tall as real life, face inches from the inside of the glass. Its blankness seemed sorrowful. He lifted the frame overhead, intent to crush it, but before gravity could do its part, the photograph turned liquid. Image and glass melted, sloshing over his wrists, too cold to be water, too thick to be ink. The shadow billowed up that liquid column like smoke reversed, enveloping his arms, shoulders, chest. He tried to wrench free, but the texture, though weightless, clung tighter than tar. Marcus understood then. The shadow had never been replacing him. It had been siphoning him, recycling his presence into its own negative. Destroying photographs only concentrated what remained of him into fewer emulsion layers, making him easier to collect. Resistance crumbled. Memories fluttered out. First kisses behind a freshman dorm. The scent of his father's dark room. The taste of stolen peach candy at 11. Each memory translated into black pigment that streamed into the creature. Marcus felt transparent, ribs lanterning through shirt. The last thing he saw of the real world was Volt pounding on the outside door, face pale behind the glass, shouting. The gallery's emergency lights caught the reflection of Marcus, and for once the reflection showed only the man, not the monster. A brief, punishing relief. Then the world inverted. Photographic paper unrolled beneath his feet, infinite and white, and the city around him shrank into grainy halftone before dissolving entirely. When the light surged back, the gallery lay wrecked, frames shattered, floor a carpet of shards. Guests and staff crawled out from hiding. They found no body, only Marcus's camera on the ground, lens cracked but still humming, autofocus cycling aimlessly. On its digital screen displayed an image never taken, the exhibition room empty, every wall occupied by one colossal print of a hollow-eyed man standing alone, begging the viewer for sleep. The police report labeled Marcus a missing person. Volt told detectives he might have fled a nervous breakdown. Yet nighttime couriers swear that on certain alley walls, under sodium lamps, a new graffiti appears. A silhouette of a lanky figure holding a camera, its shutter forever open. Those who linger claim they feel tired afterward, eyelids blessedly heavy, as if someone elsewhere were gladly shouldering their insomnia for them.